me it's the same. It's okay also like this, but maybe you can. I'm not able to change the name in the full name with CNR, etc. So I mean, for me it's okay like this, but maybe for people.
I try to change your name.
Thanks.
Come si può
Ma infatti anche io mi ricordavo che aveva un colore diverso, però non sono sicuro di questa cosa.
Luca, sorry, hai cambiato tu il...
No.
No. Come si
No,
fa?
l'ho cambiato io.
Ah, ok, grazie.
E questo qua.
Quello che aveva
Se no era un problema se non sapevamo chi cambiava i nomi.
Esatto. Aspetta che non serviva. Magari...
È proprio... Però sono abbastanza sicura che sia quello.
Sì, è questo, è questo.
Era solo incastrato, non si vedere.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
Ok. Vediamo se si sente, perché il problema è l'audio pure.
No, l'audio è questo.
No, l'audio loro. Se si
Deve passare il segnale.
okay. Paola o Luca, can you try to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ok.
I've got un ritorno.
Quando...
Dobbiamo togliere l'audio qui.
Qua, anche qua.
Però, prova questo. Mutare quello.
Forse da...
No, quello non c'entra niente. Questo. Microfono lì.
Per impostazione privacy.
No, era solo incastrato.
No, questo qua secondo me è quello dell'audio.
No, l'audio è questo. È il secondo.
Questo è
Perché va lì? Ah no, è quello lì. Accesso al microfono, disattiva. Un attimo.
prova a parlare.
Can you hear us?
Ma non sento bene.
Yes. Sì.
Casomai quando parlate voi noi disattiviamo l'audio qui.
No, va bene. Adesso tendenzialmente va bene. Nel senso, prima sentivo un rumore, però adesso così va bene.
Ok, perfetto.
Oppure sì, vi mutate voi quando parliamo noi, insomma, non è quello il problema.
Sì, per favore, quando non parlate mutatevi, se no va tutto in stereo, è un casino.
Okay, 5 minutes and we are ready to start. Hello. Shall we start? Is the audio okay? Can you hear us? Okay. So good morning, everyone, and here in presence and online, and we welcome you in this event, which is part of the End Complicity Week, organized by the Network of Research and Universities for Palestine. And today's event invites us to discuss about the issue of the academic boycott of Israel, and which is an issue that calls us to discuss a topic that sits at the intersection of scholarship, ethics, and political responsibility. And we wish to discuss this topic, its fundamental aspects, its importance, its necessity today, its ways of implementation, and its effectiveness. And we will do so with a few colleagues, whom I'm honored to introduce to you, starting with Haidar, who is an associate professor of postcolonial and postmodern literature at Al-Aqsa University of Gaza, and is an outstanding scholar in literary studies. He has published a book titled Modeling Postmodernism, Interpretative Possibilities of Critical Theory, but he is also very active in the field of course, the politics of Palestine, and he published many articles on several journals and published books on the theme like decolonizing the Palestinian mind, and more recently banging on the walls of the tank dispatches from Gaza. And it's also a policy advisor with the Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network, and on the advisory board of PACBI, the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel. So I welcome you here. And he will discuss with Stephanie Westbrook, who is the coordinator of PACBI in Italy, and with who I also welcome here, and with Luca Galantucci, who is a researcher at the Institute for Applied Mathematics at the CNR, the National Research Center, Council here is in Rome, and with Leonardo de Franceschi, who is associate professor of postcolonial cinema media here at the University of Roma, which also has in this for this meeting. And I thank also the students who are hosting us in their hall here at the university. So I leave now the floor to Haidar, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Just before I start, you can hear me. Oh, thank you so much. Perfect. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And I would like to acknowledge all the colleagues sharing this platform with me. And I usually, since I left Gaza in December 2023, that is to say 2 months after the beginning of the ongoing genocide, I usually start by paying tribute to the colleagues that I have lost from Al-Aqsa University and my students. We have lost 38 colleagues from Al-Aqsa University, and we've lost 288 students. In Gaza, we used to have 11 academic institutions, including 8 universities. The 8 universities have been completely destroyed, including my beautiful university with its 2 beautiful campuses, one campus in the south in Khan Yunis and another one in Gaza City. So that's how I always open, my discussions about what is happening in Gaza. I also would like to pay tribute to 54 cousins of mine that we've lost over the last 2 years, and I will be talking in detail about that. But let me open by quoting a South African fellow, since I'm speaking to you from Johannesburg, South Africa. And I want to quote Navi Pillay. Navi Pillay is the chair of the United Nations Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territories, including East Jerusalem. Last month, Navi Pillay chaired an investigation commission into the crime of genocide that is taking place right now in Gaza. And she had this to say. That was last month. And I'm quoting, "The goal of the Israeli government is abundantly clear: the destruction of life in Gaza," unquote. And let me repeat, the destruction of life in Gaza, including, of course, academic life, including schools, universities, hospitals, houses, etc., etc. And I will be giving you the latest figures that I have, even though, I mean, we need to agree that we are not numbers. And I usually don't like to talk about figures and numbers, but I find myself forced to do that. But as an introduction, of course, I'll have to talk about the genocide. I know that I'm supposed to be talking about academic boycott, but there are reasons why we are calling for not only academic boycott, we are calling for academic boycott, sports boycott, artistic boycott, diplomatic boycott, etc., etc. But since we are academics, yeah, we will talk a little bit about our suffering as Palestinian academics living in Gaza, not only in Gaza, the West Bank, and even the third-class citizens of Israel, Palestinian citizens of Israel, who live in Israel. But it is extremely difficult, honestly. I mean, yesterday I was sharing a platform with comrade sister Francesca Albanese in Cape Town before she presented her wonderful report on the economy of genocide, from economy occupation to economy of genocide, from Cape Town, because she was not allowed to go to the United States of America because of the sanctions imposed on her by the right-wing fascist government of the United States of America. But I want to say is that it's extremely difficult to find an appropriate word that can describe and encompass the horror of what is happening in Gaza other than evil. I couldn't find another word. I really couldn't find any other word that can describe what is happening in Gaza except evil. Look, I'm talking to you as an academic, but I'm also talking to you as a genocide survivor, as a father of 2 kids. The human dimension is always there. And I'm telling you that I know for a fact that I'm supposed to be dead. Most of my colleagues and friends have lost their lives. Some of the closest, actually, friends of mine, BDS activists, including my former student Khalil Abu Yahya, who was with me on the phone 3 hours before he was targeted, together with his wife, who was also a former student of mine, Tasneem Thabit. They have names, including their 2 toddlers, including their families. 9 people. And he was with me on the phone 3 hours before they killed him. Rifat al-Ar'ir, I'm sure the name is familiar, the poet, the academic from Islamic University and Al-Aqsa University as well, who was targeted and killed together with his family. So I know, and I can go on and on and on. The last student that was killed was one of my most brilliant students, Aya Siyam, from the Nusayrat refugee camp, where I was born, where my parents died in 2005. She, together with her family, 10 members of the family, including her parents, were killed. And she was hoping to be able to further her studies in Europe. Khalil Abu Yahya wanted to come to South Africa and get a PhD degree. So this is the kind of the environment that we are dealing with here. Academics who lose their lives because they are academics, because they are Palestinian. Students, university students, toddlers, not only university, toddlers. I mean, we're talking about 24,000 children that have been targeted by genocidal Israel. I used to call it apartheid Israel. I no longer call it apartheid. We've gone beyond that. We've gone beyond that. And let me tell you, and I said this when I was with the Franceschi addressing thousands of people in Cape Town, at Cape Town University. People don't, and I understand, they cannot understand what genocide means. This is an unprecedented genocide, live stream genocide. So, and this is why I'm saying, you know, I couldn't find any other word except evil, an absolute evil, devoid of even the most minimal restrictions or controls or deterrents, which, however superficial, sometimes succeed in curbing the savage evil that lurks beneath the surface, limiting its manifestations. This is an evil, and allow me not to use academic jargons. As I told you, yes, I'm an academic, but I'm also as a human being, a genocide survivor. And honestly, the reason why I'm speaking to you from South Africa is only because I have two little kids, and the Israelis, instead of targeting, I mean, only activists, they go after their families. This is what has been going on. And at the beginning of the genocide, I was contacted by the Embassy of South Africa in Ramallah asking me if I wanted to leave, and I said no. In 2008, when Israel launched a massive attack for 18 days, killing more than 1,200 people within 18 days, I refused to leave. I was not married then. 2011, for a week, Israel launched another massive attack, killing 200 people, including 67 children. I refused to leave. 2014, for 51 days, and I refused to leave. 51 days, killing more than 2,400 people, including 634 children. And I'm giving you these figures, and I'm telling you that I refused to leave at the time because they would go after activists, but they would not wipe out, you know, whole families. And when I say whole families, I'm not talking about nuclear families. I'm talking about extended families, clans. And this is what has been going on since the 7th of October 2023. And this is why, and I will talk about figures, this is why I call it evil, just to make people understand what I'm talking about. I will allude to Antonio Gramsci, one of my favorite philosophers and thinkers and activists, and why he called times like these times of monsters. But I think this is an evil, as I said, devoid of all frameworks and explanations that justify and rationalize its consequences and find excuses for it after the fact is done. I mean, no, the Israelis are very clear about that. They want to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And if the Palestinians of Gaza refuse to leave Gaza, we will kill them. As simple as that. Palestinians are the most educated on earth. All right, let's target their academic institutions. Let's target their schools. Let's kill their academics. Let's kill their intellectuals. And if they are stubborn and they don't want to leave, we will kill their families. And that's what has been going on. And I know that I'm supposed to be dead. And I know that my family is supposed to be dead. And comrades from South Africa kept nagging me because I'm privileged enough to have a dual citizenship, Palestinian and South African. That's why sometimes I feel schizophrenic. You know, my South African self and my Palestinian self. So I think, you know, following, we know what Israeli and you know, political and military leaders and academics and Israeli academic, not a single Israeli academic institution has recognized what's happening in Gaza as genocide. Not a single academic institution. You might find one academic here, an academic there, but as institutions. And this is why we are calling for institutional boycott of Israeli academic institutions. So Israeli political and military leaders have deliberately, that's my conclusion, unleashed a genocidal war to wreak havoc on Gaza, making it unlivable. Let's rewind a little bit. 2017, United Nations issued a report expecting Gaza to become unlivable by 2020. That was before the 7th of October 2023, comrades. And I was there. I lived through the medieval siege imposed on Gaza since 2006, because we decided to vote against the will of the occupier. We decided to vote against the Oslo Accords. We decided to vote against the racist two-state solution. And therefore, in cahoot with the reactionary Arab regimes and the United States of America, genocidal Israel decided to impose a deadly hermetic siege on Gaza. And the reaction of the international community since then has been absolutely nothing, or actually blaming the victim. And I'm referring to official bodies of international law. I'm not talking about comrades such as yourselves. No. I mean, we are proud of what you have been doing in Italy. We are proud of what our Spanish comrades and the people of Spain have been doing. The Colombian government, the South African government. Now I'm talking about, you know, the European Union, even the United Nations Security Council. 7 vetoes have been used by the United States of America 7 vetoes against ceasefire, saving people's lives. So my question is, what has been the reaction of Israeli academic institutions? Nothing. Supporting the genocide, indeed. Supplying the genocidal army, Israeli genocidal forces, people called IDF, no, I call it the IGF, committing an unprecedented genocide against the people of Gaza. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, Gaza is the most densely populated area on earth, 360 square kilometers, and we are between 2.3 and 4.4 million people living there. Of course, we've lost about 5% of our people over the last 2 years. So Israel has severely punished Gaza's population, especially women, children. 95% of those who got killed so far are civilians. Civilians, women, children, the elderly. For what? For daring to challenge Israel's colonial invincibility. As simple as that. As simple as that. I mean, and now I'm going to give you, I know it's, again, we are not numbers. Let me repeat that. Please let's not fall into that trap. You are talking to a genocide survivor who has lost 54 of his cousins. I'm talking about my direct cousins, the Eid clan. And I'm not mentioning, you know, my relatives from my mother's side. And so since October 7th, 2023, with American support, with European support, Israel has been committing genocide. I mean, as I said, including not only killing, but, you know, let's not forget starvation, starving people to death, literally. We're not talking about a fiction here. We are not using metaphors. We're not using figures of speech, because I've lost some of my relatives who emaciation. Actually, emaciation. That's what happened. They were emaciated, starved to death. Starvation, destruction, forced displacement. By the way, I've lost my own flat. And then after I lost my own flat, I moved to my family home 1 week before the declaration of the so-called ceasefire. My family home was also destroyed. And I also moved and stayed with my sister in Rafah. Her house has also been destroyed. My in-laws' house has also been destroyed. I have no house, no home to go back to now. This is just one simple example. And am I complaining? No, I'm not complaining. I'm stating facts. I've decided not to complain. Most Palestinians of Gaza have decided not to complain. No. We are not calling for sympathy, by the way. We're calling for solidarity. We're not calling for, we don't want sympathy. So many people have sympathized with us, and the result is nothing. But we want practical solidarity. And that's why we called, as Palestinian civil society, we called on the international community. If the international community is serious about international law, implementation of law, we've called on this international community to boycott genocidal Israel, to divest not only from Israel, that's taken for granted. We want international companies as well to divest from genocidal Israel. This is what happened against the apartheid regime of South Africa. And this is what ultimately led to the collapse of apartheid in South Africa. But we want also sanctions. And we expect academic institutions to live up to their academic responsibility. As an academic, and I can tell you, there is a consensus amongst Palestinian civil society sectors, including academic institutions, expecting the international community, academic institutions in particular, to boycott Israeli academic institutions, not only due to their complicity in Israel's violations of human rights and war crimes and crimes against humanity, their direct participation, because they are directly involved in the war crimes and crimes against humanity, including the genocide committed against our people. And now, let me give you numbers, and I'm not feeling comfortable doing that. I must tell you this, I'm not feeling comfortable at all. If you kill one person, it's like you are killing the whole world for me. It's like you are killing the whole world. But the number of those killed since the 7th of October, according, and I'm going to quote the ministry, the Gaza-based Ministry of Health. So these numbers are the numbers of registered people who have been killed, which means we know their names. So what about those whose names we don't know? No. The Minister of Health tries to avoid that. So we have so far about 67,000, and the number has risen, by the way, and 67,682 martyrs, shaheeds, and more than 170,033 wounded. Okay. And because I knew that I was supposed to be addressing academics in Italy today, I contacted last night the Ministry of Education. Because if I want to call for a boycott, and I know academics usually prefer, footnotes, works cited, numbers, figures. No, but I'm going to do that. And according to the Minister of Education, the Palestinian Minister of Education in Ramallah, over the last 2 years, we've lost more than 20, let that sink in. 20,000 students over the last 2 years. University students and, school students, secondary school, prep school, primaries, etc., etc. More than 20,000 students and 1,037 teachers. 1,037 teachers have been killed since the beginning of the genocide. Now, that's the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. In Gaza, since the beginning of the genocide, the number has risen to 19,910. 19,910. And those injured, it has risen to more than 30,000. Now, these are official figures. And I'm talking about, I also asked about how many schools have been destroyed. 179 schools. Government schools, not UNRWA schools. Government, 179. Okay, so I asked about how many university buildings. And I was shocked, to tell you the truth. I thought that I knew. And I was shocked, and I'm sure this will come as a surprise to some of you. 63 university buildings. 63 university buildings. So as academics, what are we waiting for? How many Israeli academic institutions have condemned that? Nada. Nada. Zero. Institutions. How many cultural institutions in Israel have student solidarity with their colleagues in Gaza? Yeah, I know an individual here, an individual there, 100, 200, all right. But as institutions, nothing. So I think, I also asked about UNRWA schools because 2/3 of Palestinians of Gaza are refugees. I myself went to an UNRWA school. I wanted to know how many UNRWA schools have been destroyed. 100. 100 UNRWA schools were bombed and vandalized. So, comrades, you are talking to, Palestinians who are the most educated people. I'm not talking about, I'm not mentioning that out of a chauvinistic, perspective. No, these are statistics and facts. We have zero illiteracy in Palestine. The reason is, it's not because we are smart, because we are left only with education. Only with education. My mom had to sell her jewelry in order to educate us. And this is a very simple example. This is what the overwhelming majority of Palestinians do, because there's only one weapon left for us Palestinians: education. Education. And Israel knows this very well. And this is why it has been targeting academic institutions, killing my colleagues, killing academics, killing cultural figures, killing students. For more than 2 years, kids in Gaza have not been going to schools. I have tried to teach my students online. And we've been fighting to do that. We are trying. We are trying. I don't want to tell you that I have failed, but we are still trying. But since we are talking about figures, and again, because I'm talking to academics, and I know we are obsessed with punctuality, obsessed with figures, obsessed with numbers. According to The Economist and the Lancet journal, the reputable medical journal, the Lancet, their researchers found that the overlap of the figure, the numbers and figures that I've just given you, the overlap was so small that the true number of this was probably between 46 and 107% higher than the number that I have just given you, higher than the official ministry total number. So if you assume that the ratio has stayed the same since the last June and not fallen as systems caught up during the ceasefire says, and if you apply that to the current situation tally, it would suggest that between, and here is what the Lancet and the Economist are saying, between 77,000 and 109,000 Gazans have been killed, which means 4 to 5% of the territory's pre-war population. We have lost 4 to 5% of our population. And I was talking to South Africans. This is what I have been doing since I arrived. It's like killing 6 to 8 million South Africans within 1.5 years. And then I thought about Americans, and I asked one of my friends who's very good in mathematics, and because I don't know, he said it's like killing between 22 and 26 million Americans within 2 years. I don't know about Italy, but I'm sure you can find out. I mean, what can you say about that? I mean, we are not numbers. As I'm speaking to you right now, honestly, I can feel the specter of Khalil Abu Yahya, Reem al-Farra, Aya Siam, my own colleague from the Department of Literature, Abdurrahman al-Hor, who was killed together with 20 of his family members. I can feel them with us right now, urging us to do something. And I know what they are urging us to do, to boycott. To boycott. We are civilians, we are academics. And the only thing, the only weapon, the only window of hope we have right now is boycott. And I know very well that is what hurts apartheid Israel. In 2014, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he was referring to academic and cultural boycott, he said this is a strategic threat to the state of Israel. The Israeli president at the time, he said this is an existential threat to the state of Israel. Now, if they are saying that, we want to pose a threat to apartheid Israel. So I don't want to go on talking about, I have written a lot, in fact, about figures and numbers. And what I have is shocking. The last figure I want to say is that one of the Lancet's reports suggests that the figure is, and this is shocking, this is really shocking. This was 1.5 years after the beginning of the genocide, that Gazans had, that's 1.5 years, as I said, had lost more than 377,000. 377,000 people. And to tell you the truth, I tend to believe in that figure. I tend to believe in that figure. Look, with my own eyes, I come from a literature background, and that's why sometimes I confuse fiction with reality. And I like that, because I'm affected by the likes of Ghassan Kanafani, Palestinian writer, one of my gurus. I'm affected by the likes of Edward Said, Antonio Gramsci, Rosa Luxemburg. And I had the experience of a sort of an out-of-body experience when I was in Rafah before I left. And I was walking and I saw a destroyed house and there was something, a graffiti written on that destroyed house. Hussam is under the rubble of this house. So there was a dead body that had been left there for a week. And that was a time when I had an out-of-body experience where I became like a ghost in a way. And I started thinking about an alternative life for all those children who were getting killed by Israel's American-made, British-made, German-made weapons, an alternative life. I mean, and I asked a sort of a dialogue rather than a monologue because honestly, with all honesty, Haidar Eid, and I would say, I would use the second person pronoun, he, Haidar Eid, before the 7th of October, was a different person from me, Haidar Eid, after the 7th of October. And I do have that dialogue, very critical dialogue, in fact, thinking about alternative futures within the context of what some South Africans here called radical imaginings, radical imagining of an alternative future. That alternative future without the support of the international community is impossible. Is impossible. In South Africa, when they called in the late 50s, 2 days ago, I visited Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela spent most of his prison term. I visited it actually with Francesca Albanese. We saw the cell where he spent years of it. 27 years he was in jail. And we started talking about, why we launched our BDS school, the PACBI, Palestine Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel. Actually, that call was launched in 2004, and Stephanie will talk in details about that. But our universal, BDS call came out in 2005. And I remember I was there, and I was one of the co-founders in Gaza. I'm a member of the Boycott National Committee in Gaza. And we looked at the South African experience. The South Africans issued their first BDS call in the late 50s, 58 or 59, something like that, from London, calling on the international community to boycott the apartheid regime until it complies with international law. How long did it take the international community to heed the call made by the oppressed of South Africans? More than 30 years. More than 30 years. 1985, Margaret Thatcher calls the ANC a terrorist organization. 1987, Ronald Reagan calling Nelson Mandela a terrorist. Yeah, but the South Africans expected the international community to intervene. In addition to other, what they called pillars of struggle, tools of resistance in our terms, pillars of struggle, the armed struggle. By the way, when Nelson Mandela was arrested, 1964, taken to the Rivonia trial, accused of what? Sabotage, armed struggle. Armed struggle. Now people tend to forget that. People tend to forget, with all his comrades. That's pillar number one. Pillar number two, underground resistance, underground political resistance. Pillar number three, mass mobilization. Pillar number four, international solidarity and BDS. In the late 80s, South Africans concentrated on the last two figures, mass mobilization on the ground and BDS, global BDS. We Palestinians have tried everything. Everything. You keep hearing this, I would call it, antagonizing in a way. Okay, let's say patronizing question. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't go as far as saying, antagonizing, patronizing question. Where is the Palestinian Mandela? Excuse me. Excuse me. There are more than 10,000 political hostages languishing in Israeli dungeons. Should I mention names? Should I tell you about Ahmed Saadat, about Marwan Barghouti? And I can go on and on and on. And the thousands of Palestinian children who are languishing in Israeli dungeons. So we've done everything. I myself, okay, I'm a BDS activist. I took part in the first Intifada, the second Intifada. I joined the Great March of Return, and I lost comrades, and I lost students, and I lost friends in the Great March of Return, where we lost 270 civilians. And what was the reason? Because we dared to march on the barbed wire separating Gaza, the Gaza extermination camp, from, at the time I called it apartheid Israel, genocidal Israel. And we were blamed for calling on the international community to boycott Israel until it implements United Nations Resolution 194. United Nations Resolution 194 calling for my right of return. My right of return. So it's not only a Palestinian demand, it's an international, it's part and parcel of international law. And I don't know, I was supposed to talk about famine, starving people to death in Gaza. I think, because people say it's because of Benjamin Netanyahu, because of the far right in Israel. And let me say, I beg to differ. We are not talking about only an apartheid. We are talking about a fascist. And you, amongst all people in Italy, with your history, know what that means. A fascist society. There is a fascist, hegemonic fascist culture, political culture in Israel. Let me give you the most recent published poll in Israel itself. The majority, according to that, of Israelis support the ethnic cleansing and annihilation of the Palestinians. The majority. And I can give you dozens, hundreds of statements and recordings, posts on Facebook and Twitter, social media, available of Israeli politicians, journalists, citizens, supposedly citizens like you and me, that call for the flattening of Gaza. And this is what is happening as I'm speaking to you right now. Flattening of Gaza. Or rather, what they say, transforming Gaza into a quote unquote, a parking lot. A parking lot. The expulsion of the Gaza cockroaches. I am a cockroach. And even the use of, the Minister of Heritage, I forgot his name actually. What did he say? He called for the use of nuclear weapons. Use of nuclear weapons to flatten Gaza. 2.3 million people. And the majority, according to the poll I'm referring to, believe that there are no innocents in Gaza. And since the beginning of the war of extermination, the entire world, and you must have seen enough footage recorded by soldiers, revealing, boasting, showing off, and sadistically celebrating the crimes of child slaughtering. Look, there are two South African Israeli soldiers, and we are going after them, who have posted online how they've destroyed and killed children in Khan Yunis, for example. Yeah, blatant. And I strongly believe that the Israeli society today is in advanced stage of genocidal frenzy. They've taken back their prisoners. Donald Trump made sure that they get back their prisoners. And this is why yesterday they attacked Gaza again. Forget about ceasefire. I mean, that's nonsense. Yesterday they killed 1.4 civilians. 1.4, injuring more than 1,000 people, including 45 children yesterday. So there is like a genocidal frenzy, cheering killing as if it were a sport. Even the opposition, by the way, because people would tell you it's Ben Gvir, the Smotriches and the Ben Gvirs of the world, Benjamin Netanyahu. No, even the opposition demonstrations that you used to see before the prisoners were released took place, they took place in Tel Aviv, and they were frequently highlighted by Western media and even Arab media. These demonstrations did not generally have an audience that was against war and genocide. No, their demands were limited to the ceasefire in order to return the prisoners, which happened 2 weeks ago. So now Israel can attack at will. I don't know how much time I have, but I can go on and go on, but I will try to finish. I will try to finish. And until you, I mean, exactly, what we want. But you need to understand that there is a collective hysteria in Israel, including academics, including academic institutions, not only those, lunatic politicians. No, academic institutions are involved in that. And I'm sure, I don't want to preempt what Stephanie had to say. I mean, there is a list of universities, from Tel Aviv University to Bar Ilan University to Hebron University, etc., etc. And I think, ideologically speaking, Israel, we need to understand, Israel is a settler colonial apartheid state. Like all other settler colonies, you need to get rid of natives. You start by dehumanizing natives, dehumanizing Palestinians. And in Israel, there is like a collective consciousness that has dehumanized us Palestinians. Why Gaza in particular now? Because 2/3 of the Palestinians of Gaza are refugees entitled to their right of return. We are a constant reminder of the original sin that took place in 1948, the Nakba, the catastrophe. In other words, we are unwanted. We are unpopular. We are microscopic. We are unimportant. We are non-white. We are irrelevant. We are ghosts. And then many of us are Muslims, even though we are Muslims and Christians, by the way, and other Druze, Sumerians, etc., etc. But, with Islamophobia, Israel tends to say that it is defending Western civilization, etc., etc. So, and therefore, Israel is the oasis of democracy in the Middle East, and it needs to kill us. So the terrible reality for us Palestinians, unfortunately, and I'm trying to finish, is that we are alone. We are alone. We are beleaguered. We are under siege. We are undesirable. Nobody wants us. And I'm referring here to the official bodies of the international community. Donald Trump, 10 days ago, about 2 weeks ago, he managed to get more than 20 presidents, sheikhs, kings, princes, etc., etc., to Sharm el-Sheikh. To do what? To justify the genocide. To change the form of the genocide that has been taking place in Gaza. And let me quote my comrade and my friend, my colleague, Ilan Pape, a courageous Israeli academic historian living in the UK right now. I remember very well in 2006, 2007, when apartheid genocidal Israel decided to impose the ongoing deadly siege on Gaza, he said, this is an incremental genocide. Richard Falk, the former rapporteur, UN rapporteur for human rights in the occupied territories, I remember he wrote a piece in 2006-07 titled A Prelude to Genocide. In other words, the world knows very well that Israel has been committing a genocide in Gaza, has been committing a genocide, not only since the 7th of October, even before that. And what we want from you, Palestinian civil society has been, there is a consensus, by the way, amongst Palestinian civil society, its nationalist forces, everybody, almost everybody, calling on the international to boycott apartheid Israel, especially academically, and impose sanctions, divest from it until it complies with international law. And let me finish with a quote, if you allow me. One of my favorite thinkers, Antonio Gramsci, whose works has had a huge impact on my intellectual growth. And I always repeat that. He said, and I'm sure everybody knows it, the old world is dying. And the new world struggles to be born. And now is the time of monsters. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Haidar, for your very passionate contribution that mentions figures, but names also, that is very necessary to give names to what is happening, and to people who have left us, colleagues, students. I'm very thankful to you for this contribution that gives us this mixture of feeling of rage, sadness, disillusionment, and hope, a little hope. And I really thank you. And we'll leave maybe the questions at the end. I'll leave the floor now to Stephanie Westbrook to continue this introduction to academic boycott. And the floor is yours, and thank you again.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm sure you've heard this before, Haidar. It's very difficult to speak after you. Your words are very powerful. They are a reminder of our moral obligation to stand in effective solidarity with Palestinians. So I'm also very thankful for your words. I'd also like to acknowledge the burden of having to narrate your trauma and the collective trauma of the Palestinian people. And I also wanted to thank the network group for organizing this seminar and the week to end complicity and the important work that Rupa does. We certainly see a very marked difference in places where national or regional academic and/or student networks exist. They become a reference point for those new to or not so new to advocating for Palestinian rights, and so play a very, very important role. And we know that it takes work to maintain those networks as well. And I'd like to also just acknowledge all of those joining us today who are working to ensure that their universities or academic associations end complicity in Israel's crimes against Palestinians. And so, yes, I work for the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel. I'm the international coordinator for academic campaigns. And as Haidar mentioned, PACBI was actually founded 1 year before the BDS movement, a founding member of the BDS movement. And I think that really speaks to the importance that Palestinians gave to and continue to see in Israel's, the complicity of Israeli academic institutions in Israel's regime of settler colonial apartheid and now genocide, and the need to cut ties. And also the role that they play in creating this scholarly veneer of acceptability, even during genocide, which allows Israel to continue with impunity. But we are certainly chipping away at that impunity. Haidar used the word a number of times, unprecedented. We've been using that a lot too, in the negative, of course, but if you allow me, also in the positive. The unprecedented moment that we're living in. Haidar talked about the unprecedented violence and destruction in Gaza. One aspect that concerns us particularly is the scholasticide that's happening in Gaza, with the murder of teachers, students, professors, the destruction of the universities in Gaza. And we know what goes along with that, the destruction of laboratories and archives and libraries, and what the UN Special Rapporteur on the right to housing has described as the killing of learning, the killing of learning. So I think this is a particular call for the academic community to act. It's important for us to continue to repeat, as Haidar has already mentioned, that this did not start in October of 2023. We're talking about 77 years of Israeli settler colonialism, of apartheid, of oppression. It certainly doesn't depend on Netanyahu. Universities in Israel have always played a vital role in developing, implementing, maintaining, justifying Israel's crimes, and that complicity runs from the very deep ties with the Israeli military, with its weapons companies, with its surveillance industry, really across the board of all Israeli universities, to universities that are built either fully or partially on stolen Palestinian land in the occupied West Bank, to law facilities developing the legal justifications for Israel's crimes, which represent, obviously, first and foremost, a danger to Palestinians, but also to international law itself. Down to collaborations in archaeology. Italy certainly maintains a number of those, where Israeli academic institutions are not only robbing Palestinians of their cultural heritage, but also creating this false narrative, erasing them from their homeland. An excellent resource, I'm sure many of you know, or possibly all of you know about this, on the complicity of Israeli universities and the Israeli Academy in general, is the book by Maya Wind, Towers of Ivory and Steel, which is available in Italian as well. And as Maya acknowledges in her book, she builds on decades of Palestinian scholarship on this complicity. And so this complicity clearly extends to Israel's genocide in Gaza. Universities, just to give a few examples, Hebrew University and the University of Haifa have supplied Israeli military units committing genocide in Gaza with equipment. The Bezalel Academy of Arts created a sewing laboratory to repair military uniforms and gear, and to design new gear. Tel Aviv University organized paid staff and volunteers to prepare battle rations for Israeli soldiers committing genocide in Gaza as Palestinians were being starved. Tel Aviv University also has a venture capital firm, which is invested in the Israeli arms company Extend, which provides systems not to deploy drones, but to deploy swarms of armed drones that are being used in Gaza. Technion boasts of students and professors who created AI-driven bots to push Israeli propaganda on social media, whitewashing the genocide in Gaza. These are just a few of many, many examples, and all of what I've just mentioned is not hidden away in some university document, but displayed openly and proudly on the official websites of Israeli universities. This deep, long-running, open, direct and indirect complicity in Israel's crimes is the basis for the Palestinian call for international universities, international academic bodies to end ties with complicit Israeli universities. And so when we're mobilizing on our campuses or within academic associations, we are responding to a call from the oppressed population, the Palestinian population. In addition to the PACBI call over the past couple of years since the start of the genocide, there are also calls from the heads of 15 Palestinian universities calling to isolate Israeli academic institutions because of their complicity. Calls from the Palestinian Academic of Science and Technology, the Palestinian Federation of Unions of University Professors and Employees, from faculty and students in Gaza. So we have a responsibility to respond to that call, to heed those calls, to respect the broad consensus that Haidar talked about amongst Palestinian civil society, among Palestinians, on what is the most effective way that we can stand in solidarity with Palestinians, and that is ending complicity. We have a responsibility to do so in the most strategic way as possible to obtain results. And this is also about, as many have said before me, about freeing ourselves as well, about making our universities a better place where even the suspicion of complicity with atrocity crimes, partnerships with institutions that are complicit in genocide would be unthinkable. And that's what we're working toward. I'd like to also talk a bit about this unprecedented moment in a positive sense. And it's very difficult to talk about that, in the face of the huge tragedy in Gaza. And we certainly have a long road ahead of us. But it's over the past 2 years, we've seen many milestones, and we must take the time to recognize the results of our work, our collective work. And so speaking strictly of PACBI's work, the academic boycott, PACBI's been around for a little more than 20 years. Until January of 2024, we had exactly 2 examples of universities that had cut ties with complicit Israeli universities. Both of those are in South Africa. Since January of 2024, and certainly a huge uptick since the start of the student encampments in the spring of 2024, there have been dozens of universities, faculty unions, academic associations who have taken steps to end their complicity in Israel's crimes, or have pledged to take action. And we understand perfectly that some of these concessions on the part of university administrations were intended to undermine the student encampments in order to make these efforts less effective. And there are ongoing efforts to overturn or limit the ethical stands that have been taken. But as Angela Davis always reminds us, freedom is a constant struggle. So this is our work to continue making those gains, to build on what has been gained, and to defend those gains. It's an unprecedented shift. It was unthinkable just a couple of years ago, even to have meetings with university administration. So we really need to recognize the progress that has been made, also recognizing the long road ahead of us. And so just to go through a few of the examples of the results, I'd start with the Horizon funding program in Europe. There was a study done looking at grant applications that involved at least one Israeli partner. There has been a drop in approval rates of about 68.5% when comparing the approval rates from 2022 to 2025. There are universities in Belgium and the Netherlands, in Spain and in Ireland that have either pledged not to participate in Horizon projects with Israel or called on the EU to exclude Israel from that program. The University of the Basque Country, another particular context, recently stated that it has, since pledging last year not to have ties with complicit Israeli universities, has turned down projects worth 247 million euro. This is a testament to, we know that research funds are hard to come by, and that's a very touchy subject, but the Basque Country University is demonstrating that it can be done. There can be an ethical approach to research. The University of Utrecht, the rector in the Netherlands, the rector, when talking about the steps that the university has taken in order to end complicity in Israel's crimes, referred to it as an academic boycott. This is the first time that we have heard from a university rector referring to an academic boycott, using the boycott word, just to illustrate the shift also in the narrative. The Association of American University Professors, which held since 2005 a position against boycotts, and that position was often used to undermine the work in the United States for academic boycotts, revoked that position, went back on that position. We've also seen since the start, since the so-called ceasefire was called, we are seeing also that universities are not backtracking on the measures that they've taken. There's been public announcements. For example, the University of Amsterdam has said that they will not collaborate with Israeli institutions at this time, and building on their pledge not to participate in New Horizon Europe collaborations with Israeli partners. We see gains still being made after the so-called ceasefire. If I can mention a few from Italy, University of Bologna, Ca' Foscari, La Statale di Milano, La Bicocca, Messina, all of this happening just in the recent weeks. And we know that none of this happens without pressure, without mobilizations. There's not a single BDS win, gain, impact in the history of the BDS movement and PACBI's work that came out of nowhere. It is always due to our pressure. It's always due to our mobilizations. It's our work, the work that we have to do. And certainly some of the gains that I've mentioned, these incremental wins that we strive to achieve, to be able to build on them, to get to our ultimate goals. There are certainly aspects of these gains to criticize, absolutely. But they are all contributing to isolating Israel. They're all contributing to isolating the Israeli institutions. And they are those wins that we can build on. And everything that we're doing right now, we're building on previous milestones. I look back to May of 2021, the attacks on Gaza, in that spring, where we saw another milestone, particularly in the academic boycott, where we had hundreds of academic departments, programs, unions, and associations, no universities at that time, as well as tens of thousands of individual academics who were putting out statements in solidarity with Palestinians. And what was really unique about these statements from the past was the clarity of the language, so fully rejecting both sidesism, and also the calls for accountability. Not all of them called for academic boycott, but almost all of them called for some form of accountability. And so we build on that, and that's the base for the work that we've been doing over the past 2 years. There is also a silent boycott. This appears very frequently on Israeli media. There was a Knesset report on this that talked about this being a threat to Israel's economy, research, and security, because of this huge drop in international research collaborations and the number of students, international students studying in Israel. there have been reports of researchers who don't respond to emails from Israeli universities, contracts that have either been canceled or not renewed. No longer that flow of proposals for collaborations, and something that is really creating a lot of pressure on or contributing to isolating Israeli academia. We also are in a moment of unprecedented tools at our disposal. We have the ICJ rulings that carry with them legal obligations, and technically those obligations regard states. But there's a legal brief from the Law Development Center at the University of Antwerp that talks and argues how these obligations for states trickle down to public institutions, including our public universities. If we look at the ICJ ruling on the illegality of Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territory, we have Ariel University, which is built in an illegal Israeli settlement. Hebrew University, partially built on stolen Palestinian land in occupied East Jerusalem. All universities collaborate, all Israeli universities collaborate with Ariel University, and so that ruling applies directly here. We have dozens of UN experts. This is led also by the work of Francesca Albanese in their recommendations in calling to end ties with Israel, calling specifically to end academic relations with Israel. We have 209 former EU and member state ambassadors, diplomatic staff, calling on states to direct public universities to cease collaborations with Israeli entities that are suspected of involvement in atrocity crimes. And so we have many of these, including Francesca Albanese's report from Economy of Occupation to Economy of Genocide, which also talks about academic institutions. We know that these reports, these statements, these rulings won't be enough on their own. Again, it's coming back to us. It's coming back to our people power. It's coming back to the work that we do to push for these rulings to be respected and implemented. What we see working really well, looking at the, PACBI is in a position to have a sort of global overview of what's being done around the world. Certainly, and this really applies to all BDS campaigns and really all campaigns, is the strength of broad coalitions, those intersectional campaigns, working together with other campus groups, and going back to that, that idea of freeing ourselves and making our universities a better place. As I said, the national networks that exist, like RUP, really help, and certainly those partnerships or coordination that occurs between faculty, staff, and students. This is something that's really important. Each component of the university community has a unique voice, has a different position, a different weight with the university administration, different ways of action, and that work in tandem is really what we see as being very, very effective. We really need to, as I said before, think about working in a way that is strategic, making strategic choices depending on the context, and that's something that's part of the foundations of the BDS movement is this idea of context sensitivity. And so, really doing that, that work to lay out a strategy for campaigns, doing the power mapping, thinking about ways to do movement building, looking for allies and other movements, having measurable goals, so we can really evaluate the effectiveness of our work, and look to present. When we're dealing with university administrations, and we understand how difficult that can be, we want to look for ways to make it really difficult for them to argue against our positions. And so that can be through promoting policies on ethical academic ties, And this can be something generic, because we don't want our universities to have ties with any institution that is knowingly contributing to, atrocity crimes. And so these are very effective ways to put university administrations in a difficult position. Also looking at other ways to act, ethical procurement is something that is being pursued in university environments. And so looking to eliminate unethical suppliers for the university in the procurement policies. And it's all about creating those, as I said before, those incremental gains, those incremental wins, and thinking about what can be achieved in our particular context in order to build on that. And it's something that's the academic PACBI has guidelines on how to implement the academic boycott. It's an institutional boycott. It's not against Israeli individuals. PACBI supports academic freedom, and all BDS campaigns are based on complicity and not identity. Mere affiliation of Israeli scholars to complicit Israeli universities is not what we consider complicity. Now, with that said, during a genocide, as a genocide is taking place, we have published a document calling not to platform individual Israelis, whether they're scholars, athletes, artists who are traveling for events, who are reasonably suspected of involvement in or incitement to atrocity crimes without due diligence. So we're calling for due diligence on those scholars who are reasonably suspected. That is really the least that we can do. We are also calling to exclude from events scholars, individual Israelis who either reside in or work in illegal settlements. They are knowingly participating in a war crime. Israel's settlement regime is a war crime under international law. So this would include scholars who work at Ariel University or at Hebrew University. Again, this has nothing to do with their identity or their affiliation. This is their knowing participation in a war crime, and this is crucial. We also have been advocating for ethical policies for academic conferences, academic journals, requiring, for example, a complicity acknowledgement statement. And that would be for institutions that have a record of persistent involvement in grave human rights violations. So we're talking about war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. And so that would certainly apply to complicit Israeli institutions. And so these are ways to make our conferences, our journals more ethical. It's something that's, that that's really about, as I said before, making our institutions a better place to free ourselves as we stand in solidarity with Palestinians. I'll wrap it up here, so we have plenty of time for the other panelists and questions. But I would like to just conclude here with how Israel is reacting to the academic boycotts. It is certainly in a panic over particularly academic boycott, and that goes back to the role that these institutions play in complicit in Israel's crimes, as well as creating that veneer of acceptability. We know that the Israeli ministry, I believe it's called Science, Technology, and Innovation, has allocated 22 million euro specifically to combating the academic boycotts. Israel has allocated millions of euro over the years to combat BDS. This is the first time that we know of where it is specifically allocated for combating the academic boycott. We certainly see Israeli universities, institutions reaching out to international institutions, especially those that have taken some stand to end their complicity, asking them to walk those back. These letters are signed also by, they are claiming to respect international law, These letters are signed by Ariel University, an illegal Israeli settlement university, so no credibility there at all. We don't know of any university that has walked back any of the decisions that have been made based on these letters. We know that, as I mentioned, there's this silent boycott going on. There have been meetings amongst Israeli academics, and they are not talking about how to end the complicity of their institutions, but rather how to get around the bans that have been put in place on their collaborations. And so it's not our goal at all to create panic amongst Israeli academics or Israeli academic institutions, but it's all about isolating Israel, isolating complicit Israeli institutions. It's all part of the work that we're doing, and Israel is just as worried about motions being passed in contexts that are relatively easy. There are no easy, but there are contexts that are more easy for us to work in, to advocate for Palestinian rights. They are just as worried about those as they are about even just talking about academic boycott in complex context. And so we're all part of the same movement. We're all contributing to the isolation of Israel, and we're also normalizing, in the positive sense, the idea of an academic boycott that has remained taboo for so long. And I will conclude with a quote as well. It is not at all someone that I have any respect for at all. It's President Trump, Donald Trump, who recently said with his peace plan that Israel cannot fight the world. And the world that he is talking about is us. Israel cannot fight against us. We have this people power. It's something that they cannot take away from us. And in this moment, we have an obligation to use it. It is powerful. We can use it. It can be effective. We are using it. We are chipping away at that veneer of acceptability of maintaining ties with complicit Israeli universities. And so just, an invitation to be that world that Trump talked about. Thank you.
Thanks for your rich presentation, which photographs the situation of the ongoing boycott, what have we reached, what we have to do, the guidelines, the tools we have, and the effects that is going to have the boycott in the long term. So thank you very much. And now I leave the floor to Luca Galantucci. From the National Research Council in Rome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, thank you very much for organizing this this meeting. I think it's very important that we try to share information regarding how we build our campaigns in our in the places where we work, so either university or research centers. I'm gonna try to be very brief, just saying how we built our some momentum, the limits that we have faced, and by the way, also giving some information what we found out by looking at the collaborations of, in this case, CNR, which is the National Research Council of Italy. So, I mean, thanks to the wonderful introduction to boycott given by Stephanie, especially on the role of universities, the Israeli university in supporting the occupation and also the genocide. I don't have to repeat all what she said. Just like to underline that what the genocide has revealed is that the real function of the Israeli university in the Israeli society, but also worldwide, in the sense that the narrative has always been of a progressive world, of a world that was actually doing much discoveries in science for the benefit of the worldwide community. But it is clear now, finally, the role that universities have in the system of repression, killing, and control of the Palestinians, and therefore it's one of the three pillars, together with the occupation forces and the financial. In the financial sector. Building on this, we used, I mean, the ruling of the ICJ in January, saying that it was a plausible genocide, and the advisory opinion of the ICJ in July, and then the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations to say that it was clear that in our case, CNR should cut ties with the Israeli university and research centers, because it was by keeping those collaboration in place was violating international law, because there is one part of the, especially of the resolution of General Assembly, that says that it is um, states need to enforce sanctions against physical and legal bodies involved in the occupation. And so it is clear with what, I mean, which just been said before, that all of those universities play a role in the occupation. I don't have to go into detail because Stephanie already mentioned some of them. But I mean, this was our the way, let's say, the angle with which we tackled um, the struggle to end suspensions. And so what we did is that we especially tried to call people to do seminars in our place, so either in Cenere and in Sapienza. And in this case, we invited twice Francesca Albanese to explain all the legal aspects of why the states and the public bodies were obliged to cut ties with the Israeli institution and with the arms industry, because this is the other aspect, of course, with arm industries which supply weapons to the Israeli genocidal government and state. And also we try to put it on the way of making clear to the governing bodies of the university and of Cenere that there could be legal challenges for them if they continue to sustain those Israeli the collaboration with Israeli university. This all of this we wrote letters, we made meetings, etc. And at the end, we ended up with 25% of our staff, which I would say it's quite big. I mean, at least for Italian academic standards, which signed letters asking for cutting the collaborations. And this is one side of what we have done. But something very I mean, we got more leverage by showing and by digging on the actual collaborations that Cenere has with Israeli universities and with arms industry, and also Israeli arms industries. For example, I mean, the Cenere has set up bilateral agreement with the Israeli Science Foundation after October the 7th, for instance. We have a bilateral agreement with the Weizmann Institute, which we know has been the institute where the nuclear research for the Israeli nuclear weapon has been going on for decades, and also with Technion, has got big links with Technion. But I think that the most things that are most critical is that Cenere has controls another public body, which is the Italian Center for Aerospace Research. And this body has Horizon Europe partnerships with Israeli aerospace industries. And as you may know, Israel aerospace industries builds the HP drones, which are responsible for killing. I mean, it's documented that the strikes of those drones have killed tens and hundreds of people. The same with the hexacopter and quadcopters it builds. It builds components for F-35s, for D9 bulldozers, which are used to flatten the Gaza in this case, but also in the West Bank, Gaza territory. So these are, of course, things that I mean, by making those information circulate, people, of course, get more get more involved in this. We also have been writing expert letters to the project managers of Horizon projects, which involved Israeli aerospace industries. So what is the what has been the response to our to our struggle, to our movement? So actually, this is something which might be um, useful to say, because it might be something that we need to address when we speak and when we have the replies of the governing bodies, is that they always put it on the freedom of research. If we cut ties the collaborations, then we will prevent the academics to have their freedom of doing research. Of course, this is clearly hypocritical, in the sense that there is no absolute freedom of research in the sense that there are higher and higher rights that I mean that you cannot limitate because of your freedom of research. And then I would also be very curious of the response if today I would start a collaboration with Iran to build a nuclear weapon, if I could still go on because of my freedom of research. Of course, this shows double standard that Western countries has always had, especially now. I mean, it's clear with the Russia-Ukraine war and with the Gaza genocide. And also, I mean, this freedom of research, I mean, only applies in this hypocritical sense, but there is no, but when the governments cut funds or make research more precarious, of course, in that case, the freedom of research is actually limited. But of course, nobody raises this concern. And then I mean, I think that another reply that we can give to those bodies that try to justify the fact that they want to continue their collaboration with the Israeli university and arms industries, is the fact that actually they are trying to limit our academic freedom, especially when we try to talk about Palestine. So there can be no two directions. One side, they ask us, no, we cannot cut ties because you have your academic freedom. On the other side, they try to deny, for example, classrooms to do meetings like this. The last thing I want to say, so that I can leave time for interactions with the with our speakers, is that I think that we need to pursue in trying to boycott academic Israeli universities, because actually the transformation and the transformation of the university, of the Israeli university, into a very neoliberal university, where the universities have to attract funds from outside, because the government is not giving funds to do public research. It is really giving money in case to do military research. But the dependence of the Israeli universities from the attraction of external funds means that they are very vulnerable. So this means that we need exactly to go in this direction. What the data that Stephanie was mentioning before shows that it is actually going this direction, with people that universities that don't want to collaborate with the Israeli universities. The last thing, and I will end with this, is that I think that we have also to stress how, let's say, hypocritical and really not appropriate is the fact that science is neutral. Okay, science never been neutral. Science has always been played has been an actor. I mean, as it can. I mean, it cannot be differently in society. It is not neutral. How you build science is not neutral. The use that you do of science, and especially, I mean, something which I mean, I think that we need to repeat in this country, is that I mean, in this case, no neutrality can be there cannot be the stance for neutrality. And to remind I mean, all the people that live in this country, that a similar uh, mm, choice was faced by in the 1930s in Italy, where the people and the fascists were obliged to sign the adherence to the fascist government, and only 12 out of thousands, only 12 people decide to sign, to not to sign, and so to be on the right side of the history. And I think that this we have to make people understand that this is the same case. This is exactly the same situation where you have to choose on which side, and that this, I mean, we should do this, especially to put pressure on Israel and to free and to free Palestine. But I think that many people egoistically really are touched, at least not more, but touched, if you remind them that they will bear this responsibility for the next decades. And therefore, we need to really make people aware that the choice that they do today will be remembered in front of all the next generations. Because I mean, in this case, people feel more responsible. We should not need to do that, of course. I mean, because we shouldn't need to boycott the Israeli university for putting pressure and to make international law be respected. But I think that this is something that an argument that might be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca, for your contribution and for mentioning what has been done with very much energy and difficulty, but with we're trying to do, and what are the problems, and for mentioning the hypocrisy that is spreading all over the academics. And it's really ironic mentioning fascism, that scholars in fascist history or post-colonial studies are those who cannot see the colonial fascist nature of Israel, so and continue to have ties with Israel. So, but thank you again, and I leave the floor now to our last speaker, Leonardo the Franceschi from Roma. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning again, everyone. Let me first all thank Adelaide and Stephanie Westbrook for the wonderful papers, and Luca as well. For us in Italy is so important and so rare to have the possibility to confront the voices from the Palestinian Academy and to listen from their experience the truth on the cultural, artistic, and educational genocide, what has been called educide or scholasticide, inflicted by Israeli state through the IDF on Palestinian people, and especially on people from Gaza after the 7th October 2023. From Stephanie, and as some other time from Omar Barghouti, we have been learning a fundamental lesson of continuity, a lesson of tenacity and patience in resistance. But even more important than that, a message that invites all faculty members and researchers sensitive to the Palestinian cause to unite, to search for alliances, to develop a very concrete and pragmatic approach, and to never lose sight of the final objective of each action, that should be to put pressure on Israeli institutions in order to recognize the inalienable rights of Palestinian people, to end all forms of complicity in the Israeli occupation, the Israeli system of genocidal, settler colonialism, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing. But I would like also to take this opportunity for thanking the students who accepted our proposal to host this meeting in liberated room that has been renamed after Gaza, and particularly Cambiare Rotta organization, who was present in the mobilization of Italian Academy since the early 2024, and but also all the young people who are following us online. I'm taking the floor today as an activist of the network of professors, researchers, and administrative staff mobilized for the Palestinian cause called Rete Loop, Ricerca e Università per la Palestina, and as a member of the Roma 3 local network called the Roma 3 Ethical Roma 3. I'm speaking from a university that still today has possibly 3 open cooperation agreements with Israeli universities. There is the Reichman University IDC as LIA, Ben Gurion University of the Negev, and Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design, a university still having a constant cooperation with Leonardo Spa, that, as you know, has played a very important role in supporting genocide in Gaza. Cooperation also mediated by Medor Italian Foundation, in whose scientific committee are present 4 faculty members of this university, including its dean. A university that dared to deliver a honorary degree in December 2024 to Daphne Barak Eretz, a former IDC official and an actual member of the Israeli Supreme Court, and all this in a time of genocide, just to be clear. But to open a wider perspective in space and time, let's say that in the latest 1 year and a half, starting more or less from March 2024, Italian universities started to mobilize, especially after the pronunciation of ICJ in January 2024 that denounced the high risk of genocide in Gaza and recommended the State of Israel and each and every third state to take all measures to prevent, interrupt, and avoid any further war crimes and crimes against humanity committed along what was possibly to be intended as a genocidal military operation. The first step was to denounce the projects promoted by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs along a bilateral scheme of cooperation between Italian and Israeli universities, with a special reference to those projects that could present the risk of a dual use, projects intended with a civil use but that could have been finalized again with a military use, or projects concerning sensitive issues already weaponized by Israeli economy of oppression and systemic exploitation, such as the distribution of water. Notwithstanding the huge mobilization of students in many universities in the north and the south of Italy, from Milan to Rome, from Bologna to Naples and Bari, the results of this first wave of academic movements was rather symbolic, but could tellingly expose the high level of complicity of Italian academy, not only with the Israeli universities, but also with Italian societies involved in the military support to the IDF, such as Leonardo Spada, that I mentioned before, and involved also in the exploitation of Palestinian natural resources, such as E&I. Historical bodies, such as Bologna University, chose to pursue the strategy to solicit a due diligence process in order to get all the information relating to the collaborations and Italian EU projects involving Israeli partners. Other universities, such as Torino and Pisa Scuola Superiore, chose to opt out the participation to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs public tender that I mentioned before. Only during the summer of 2024, some universities and some departments had the courage to interrupt some existing collaboration agreement with Israeli universities, such as Ariel and Ben Gurion University. And I would like to mention the case of the University of Milan and the University of Florence. Another important area of intervention opened up at the beginning of 2025 in prevision of the Riyadh Europe Plan or Readiness 2030 Plan launched in March 2025 by the European Union. In January, Pisa University voted a reformulation of its charter of values, excluding the possibility to promote collaborations with a military purpose. After that, Pisa University interrupted all existing agreements with the Reichman and Aya University, while several departments of Florence University voted for the interruption of agreements with Ben Gurion, Ariel, and Tel Aviv University. I'm going toward my conclusions. Starting from the end of August 2025, a few universities showed evidence that a new wind of change was to be rising in connection with the launch of the Global Smooth Flotilla, involving hundreds of volunteers from dozens of countries intended to reach Gaza, to shut the illegal blockade, and to deliver a huge quantity of humanitarian aid. This initiative very quickly succeeded in mobilizing again the public opinion in Italy and in other European countries, thanks also to a new role in Italy taken by a few base unions and by some categories, such as dock workers, who blocked the ships aimed to reach Israel with arms and military equipment. As a matter of fact, in September and October, some other universities and departments joined the movement, and sometimes they could even present the military operation in Gaza as a genocide, especially after the resolution of the United Nations Independent Committee on Genocide in September 2025. In a few cases, the choice was not to interrupt agreements with Israeli universities, but to vote for a suspension, or rather for a non-renewal of the existing agreements and for the non-opening of new agreements. But now I'm really coming to my conclusions. The current situation we have to recognize is not a positive one after the approval of a so fragile ceasefire and the launch of the neo-colonial Trump plan on the Gaza Strip, because the mainstream narrative has changed again, and a new orientation along the line of normalization is on its way. We risk to lose that wind of change that raised a few weeks ago. So it's time to take advantage of the popular mobilization that involved also thousands of students all over our country, and of other networks of protest concerning the politics of this far right-wing government on the university, research, and generally speaking, the welfare, in order to push for obtaining from the university bodies resolutions that may be more coherent with the values of an Italian national constitution refusing war as a way of solution for international disputes, more in line with the ethical codes many universities have adopted, and more consistent in a time of genocide, complicity, and normalization. So much work is to be done. Now and again, it's up to us to learn something from Palestinian resistance, to support Palestinian self-determination, to take inspiration from those universities who dared to interrupt existing agreements, and to hunt down teams and colleagues who perform publicly their solidarity with Global Smooth Flotilla, or even promoted resolutions admitting a genocide in Gaza without having the courage to take all the legal and moral consequences deriving from it. It's time to cut ties and end any form of complicity with Israeli genocide and settler colonial project once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonardo, for sharing your thoughts and for giving us more information about other actions that are being done at the universities by students and scholars and administratives, and how it's difficult sometimes to have a result. And when the result is there, like a declaration from the department of the central university, sometimes it doesn't tell anything, or it's just a condemn of the genocide actions of Israel, but there is no action. There is not the active solidarity that was talking about Haidar at the beginning. And what is requested is just sympathy, but not solidarity, as we were reminded at the beginning. So maybe we have a few questions, Maybe we will go on until maybe 12, 10, and 15, just to discuss this. And there are a few questions from the chat on Twitch, but also here, if you have other questions, we will, we will tell them to the speakers. So the first question is, which is the legal framework that we can call for to force the Italian university to boycott Israel? This is the first question. And the second one is, in addition to boycott Israeli academia, does it make sense to establish programs for cooperation with the Palestinian academia? And in case, what kind of cooperation? And there is another question here from the audience here. Maybe we answer the questions and then we have the last contribution. Okay, so I leave the floor to all the speakers, maybe starting with Haidar or anyone who wants to answer.
Thank you so much. I really have very, difficulties understanding because of the mic. But I think I got two questions. The first question, I think I will leave that for Stephanie to answer. This and Luca, but the second question, yes, I think cooperation, collaboration with the Palestinian universities, especially those in Gaza these days, is extremely important, of paramount importance actually for us. I myself have been working with Nelson Mandela University lately. Nelson Mandela University was the first university, I think Stephanie mentioned it, to endorse our academic boycott. And the university itself has been working with other South African universities trying to help students from Gaza, especially students of medicine, faculty of medicine, who couldn't finish their studies in Gaza. And it is expected that it will take them years to go back to Gaza. Some of them managed to get out of Gaza, go into Egypt. Some, about 2 of them went to, I think, Germany. All in all, there were 26 students who were brought to South Africa, joined University of Cape Town in Cape Town, and Wits University here in Johannesburg. And I have also been contacted by the Vice Chancellor of Nelson Mandela University asking about other possibilities and signing the best ways of signing agreements with Palestinian universities in general and those in Gaza in particular. And because most universities in Gaza and then the West Bank have ties with the Ministry of Education based in Ramallah, I asked the universities here to contact the Minister of Higher Education in Ramallah in order to coordinate programs with those universities, especially in Gaza. So some South African academics started giving online classes to Palestinian students from Gaza. There are different and various ways actually of signing agreements with universities. My university has already signed a couple of agreements. The Islamic University, which is completely destroyed, by the way, also signed agreements. By the way, Al-Aqsa University, we have more than 30,000 registered students at Al-Aqsa University. More than 30. It's the largest university, it's the biggest university in Palestine, not only in Gaza, in Palestine. So I think, yeah, people are serious about this. There are things that can be done between those universities and Palestinian universities. Yeah, and I leave the next question to Stephanie and Luca.
Yeah, before moving on to that question, if I may, I have a follow-up question for you, Haidar, on this point, something that's come up a number of times. How do we avoid having these cooperation programs with Palestinian universities become sort of a fig leaf to avoid then ending complicity. Some universities are putting that forth. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Sure. I think you remember, Stephanie. I can't exactly remember. It was 2010 or 12. We issued a statement, PACBI, calling for a total complete boycott of Israeli institutions. Even if I think it was a Canadian university at the time that wanted to have collaboration between An-Najah and Haifa University. An-Najah Haifa University and that Canadian, I can't remember the name of the university at the time. And we were very, very clear about that. We issued a statement saying that all Palestinian universities should avoid being used as fig leaves that will cover up. Actually, I myself consider them crimes, So it's not only a normalization, it is even beyond normalization because of the reasons you mentioned in your presentation now, Stephanie. They're more than complicity, Israeli universities complicity. So we have a very clear position about that. We called on all Palestinian universities to avoid doing that. We spoke directly with An-Najah University, which withdrew from the project. And then after that, we had one case. It was Al-Quds University, if you remember, headed by Sari Nisebe at the time, and he refused to deal with PACBI. And then we addressed, the Council of Higher Education. The Council of Higher Education in Palestine has representatives. Actually, all Palestinian universities' presidents are represented on the Council of Higher Education, including the Minister of Higher Education himself. We decided to escalate the issues and we went to the Ministry of Higher Education, and we have a resolution. We have a resolution from the Ministry of Higher Education to avoid becoming, leaflets by signing, collaboration agreements with a foreign university and an Israeli university.
Okay, thank you. It's good to have you on record for that. And if I can add also something to this, aside from formal cooperation agreements, we're also seeing informal grassroots cooperation in particular disciplines. I know of English as a second language teachers for Palestine that are offering online tutoring for students and that sort of thing. So it's also happening at a more grassroots level. As far as the legal framework, I'm not a lawyer. We do see some of this, what I talked about, and also Luca about the rulings, opinions from the ICJ, trying to push those forward. I would strongly suggest getting in touch with the European Legal Support Center, which is based in Amsterdam. I'm sure you know about them. I think you should be in touch with them in general. They're very overworked, but they work both in defending those who are being repressed because of standing up for Palestinian rights and those who are looking to enact some sort of legal action with regards to institutions that are complicit. So that would be my suggestion. I don't know, Luca, you probably have more to add to that.
No, I'm not a lawyer as well, so I try to take what I say with some caution. But what I understood is that if you look, for instance, to the not the last report of Francesca Albanese, but the one before last, saying economic from economic of occupation to economic of genocide, there are a few paragraphs around 80 something which clearly states what type of behavior of universities are considered as complicity. And in the last part, in the appendix, there is the legal framework of that, where she explains clearly that all these and examples of collaborations are collaboration through Horizon partnerships. For example, if I remember correctly, the Technical University of München is doing collaboration with the through Horizon with the Israeli aerospace industries, and this is an example of complicity. People are Harvard or the MIT, I don't remember, is in collaboration with the Ministry of Defense of Israel. The University of Edinburgh is having a lot of collaboration with a lot of millions of euros involved. So these are the types of collaborations, and these collaborations are a proof of complicity. So then and therefore as it's written in the conclusions of this report, it says that, I mean, those so if these are public bodies, okay, for example, universities, I mean, depending on the research centers, then the responsibility is up the ministries or governments. Okay, so in this case, as far as I understand, this can be, of course, part of submission to the International Court of Justice. But regarding people, then, as it said in the recommendations, in the conclusions of the report, then it must be made clear to those people that they can be referred to the ICC, because this is where people, so not states, are referred to, and this, I mean, and this is something that has been done. We know about Netanyahu and Gallant and other people that will follow. But I think that these are, I mean, these are the legal grounds. Then, of course, I mean, how these trials develop, it's another matter. But certainly, complicity is something which is not only ethical; it's a legal framework. But I mean, I think that one of the best things is to liaise with either known international law specialists or the legal center in Amsterdam, which certainly has more. But it's true that this also really depends on the. It is so this is at the international level, but concerning national level, this is very different from country to country, as the legal processes, if countries can pursue international crimes or not. So this is. But these are the grounds, and I think that the best thing will really be to read not the before last report of Francesca.
We have a contribution here.
Thank you. Hi, first of all, sorry for my English. And first of all, as students, we are happy to make the Al-Aqsa available for this event. And as Camberota, we have carried forward the struggles for the academic boycott of Israel throughout Italy, achieving important victories in Turin, Pisa, Bologna, and in various department councils in many other cities across the country. The struggles for the academic boycott is not over, and we continue to pursue it, strengthened by the massive mobilization of the past months under the call launched by the USB, Blocchiamo Tutto. Even in this university, where the issues of Palestine continue to be censored and spaces for discussion remain closed, we have managed to reclaim this classroom, naming it the Aula Gaza. The first student-run classroom at Roma 3 and a place for discussion and organization for all students mobilizing alongside Palestine and beyond. From the massive mobilization, a clear message has emerged: the demand for the resignation of this government, a government that, while funding the genocide of Palestinians and supporting Israel apartheid, continues to cut public education, wages, public health care, and social housing. The mobilization have shown that even in this country, it is possible to build an independent and autonomous political and social bloc that offers an alternative to the fascist and Zionist right, putting students, workers, and the popular classes back at the center. On November 14, we will take to the streets across Italy for the No Melody Day to show that students know which side they stand on the side of Palestine, and against the war-driven footer they are forcing upon us. On November 15 and 16, we will meet in a National Assembly in Bari, Rome, and Bologna to equip ourselves with the tools needed to strengthen and advance the students' mobilization. It will be an important moment of dialogue for all students who have mobilized and wish to continue doing so within schools and universities. On November 28, we will take part in the general strike called by USB against the financial bill, and on November 29, we will join the national demonstration to continue building an autonomous and independent social bloc capable of opposing war and genocide to rebuild a true alternative in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't know if there are other questions here or online. I think not. So I think we collected a lot of insights from the speakers, whom I thank really, Haidar, Stephanie Westbrook, Luca Galantucci, and Leonardo de Franceschi. And I thank all the students again for what they are doing, because it's a joint venture from all segments of society here in Italy and around the world. And thanks to the Palestinians, we are really changing our mind and our society to the best, hopefully, in the near future, the nearest as much as we can. So thank you again. Thank you again for everyone for listening, for being here, and best wishes to everyone. Thank you.
Maşallah.